Hello guys, welcome back to another NHL Power Ranking. This time, week 6 of my Power Rankings teams 31-1. Now if you guys haven't seen this Power Ranking series yet, I make them every Thursday, and in these videos I count down NHL teams, I rank them 31-1 based on performance, based on momentum, and honestly the teams that I think played the best throughout the week and throughout the year. Now, these rankings aren't totally based on the standings, so you will see some flip-flop. You will see some teams with some worse records ahead of teams with better records and stuff like that. It's mainly based on momentum and, of course, what I got to see of the teams last week and, of course, how they actually played. Now, in the past 3 weeks, we had the same number 1 and number 2 teams, the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Nashville Predators. Thankfully, this week, I am very proud to say that there's a new number 1 winner, so finally, we have a new number 1 on the Power Rankings. We're going to start off the Power Rankings for November 15th with the LA Kings at number 31, and boy, it has not been a good week for them at all. Right now, they're sitting at a 5-11-1 record, a -3 from last week. They've lost 3 straight. It's not working out for LA. They just traded Tanner Pearson away for Carl Hagelin, so we'll see if that affects anything. But right now, LA is straight dead in the water, and I don't think there's anybody catching them for worst place and the last place in the standings right now. That's number 30. I have the St. Louis Blues. Right now, they're at a 6-7-2 record, a -1 from last week. They got a couple of wins throughout the week, but I just felt they were against lesser opponents, and that 1-0 loss versus the Blackhawks was just brutal. Again, losing 1-0 against the Blackhawks, who I think had like a 7-game losing streak. Obviously, not a good look for St. Louis, and even though they've been slightly improving, we need to see a lot more for them if they want to make the playoffs. That's number 29, I have the Chicago Blackhawks. Right now, they're a 7-8-4 record, a -6 from last week, and it's just not been a good couple of weeks for Chicago. They had that 8-game losing streak. It was terrible. It sucked. They fired Coach Quenneville. This past week has been pretty rough for Chicago, and even though they got that 1-0 win versus St. Louis, I don't feel like they really deserve that win. And right now, while I feel like Chicago might be headed in the right direction, I feel like it'll take some growing pains to ultimately get there. 28th in the rankings, I have the Ottawa Senators. Right now, they're at a 7-8-3 record, a -3 from last week. And the Senators, I don't think have been as terrible as people have expected, but they're still pretty bad. I'd say a bottom 5 team, even though that doesn't reflect in the standings. We have a big mishmash of teams, so I think the Ottawa Senators are kind of on the outside looking in. And for Ottawa Senators, it just has not been a great year for them. They had that Uber scandal, then they had all that Eugene Melnyk drama, and overall, the past week has been pretty much a one to forget for Ottawa, and I don't think it'll get much better. At number 27, I have the Anaheim Ducks. Right now, they're at an 8-9-3 record, a -3 from last week. And what happened, like with the Anaheim Ducks, they've just reassured my opinion that they cannot play. They just had Cam Fowler. I think he had to get surgery or something, so he's going to be out for a while. And the Anaheim defense was already not playing all that great. And then you have Cam Fowler getting out of there and out of the equation. Right now, for Anaheim, I think they're doomed for a pretty terrible fate. And while John Gibson was carrying them for a long time, I'm not sure if he can really do that anymore, which will be ultimately a surefire death for the Anaheim Ducks. At number 26, I have the New Jersey Devils. Right now, they're a 7-8-1 record. They're a +4 from last week. I was pretty harsh on them last week at putting them at number 30, but I really did not like what I saw. This week, it still was pretty rough from them, but that win versus Pittsburgh was seriously huge for them. If they can get some momentum, they could be a pretty solid team. Now, I don't think New Jersey is going to be a playoff contender from what they've shown so far, but New Jersey, I think, went down and dipped a lot in the standings, and I think they might come back up a little bit. I think they're due for that, and that win versus Pittsburgh, I think will give them a lot of momentum for this next week. At number 25, I have the Vegas Golden Knights. Right now, they're an 8-10-1 record. It's a pretty ugly record, if I do say so myself. But that win versus Anaheim was really huge if they want to get back on track. They're 1 game away from having Nate Schmidt back in the lineup, which will drastically help that defense, I think, more than people give it credit for. And having Nate Schmidt in that lineup, I think will do wonders for them once they get him back. And they've obviously been missing him in the past few days and the past few games because, man, the defense has been rough at points. At number 24, I have the Edmonton Oilers. Right now, they're a 9-8-1 record, a -9 from last week. And I don't think they played exponentially bad. They had a really, I think they had a meh week, but it's just because there's so much glob in this middle area when it comes to NHL teams that you could put a lot of teams, a lot of places. But I ultimately have the Oilers at number 24, mostly because they had that little bit of a losing streak. They had that big win, but I still don't think Edmonton is on the right track, at least to make the playoffs, unless they fired Tom McClellan or something. I think Edmonton is still a decent team, but right now I just don't see them as a playoff contender. Speaking of teams in the mucky middle, we have the Detroit Red Wings. They're right now an 8-8-2 record, a +4 from last week, and I'm gonna give the Detroit Red Wings credit. They've been pretty solid in the last week. I think they've won 4 straight, and as a person who predicted Detroit to finish the bottom in the standings, they're playing pretty well right now. Now, I think that has something to do with goaltending and some of the rookies really performing, but right now Detroit is kind of on a roll. So, for Detroit Red Wings fans, I'm going to say enjoy it while it lasts, because it likely won't last for a while. At number 22, I have the Vancouver Canucks. Right now, they're at a 10-8-2 record, a -6 from last week. Now, I know I'm harsh on the Vancouver Canucks, but it's only because I know they'll fall back down the standings. Let's be honest here, Vancouver Canucks are not ready to contend for a playoff position, and having them first in Pacific Division a couple of weeks ago, it was not going to last for very long. So, while the Vancouver Canucks have had a good start of the season with guys like Elias Pettersson, Bo Horvat, and the goaltending really stepping up, it's nice to see that happen, but I just don't see that happening for too much longer, especially in the last week where they've lost against some pretty weak opponents, to say the least. At number 21, I have the Carolina Hurricanes. Right now, they're an 8-7-3 record, -2 from last week. And this is what I'm saying. There's so many teams in this middle area that it's hard to really sort them out. I think the Carolina Hurricanes are playing well as a team. Right now, they're just not finishing well. They're setting up plays and they're getting a lot of shots like always, but I think the main problem is finishing and finding a real sniper on that team, which Jeff Skinner seems like a perfect fit now that I think about it. But with the Carolina Hurricanes, I still think they're playing well, but ultimately, I feel like they could be a much better team in the standings if they could actually just score and finish some goals off. At number 20, I have the New York Rangers. Right now, they're a 9-7-2 record, a +2 from last week. And I'm as surprised as you guys are that the New York Rangers are playing as well as they are. I think they're on a pretty decent winning streak right now, but honestly, in the last couple of weeks, New York Rangers has surprised me with how consistent they've been and how just solid they've been playing. And while they've gotten some lucky wins, I'd say, and Henrik Lundqvist have been playing like a beast, I feel like this team is starting to finally mesh pretty well. Now, they're supposed to be in a rebuild phase, so we'll see what happens there. But right now, I think they're vastly exceeding pretty much every expectation that they had coming into the season. As number 19, I have the Philadelphia Flyers. Right now, they're a 9-8-1 record. They're a +2 from last week, and they've been playing better, I feel. They've gotten some big wins against some better opponents, but the Flyers, I think, need to find some consistency, and they're starting to find that slowly but surely, but I think if they ultimately want to make the playoffs, especially in the Metropolitan Division, they need to find some consistency, which so far in this season, they really have not had. At number 18, I have the Arizona Coyotes. Right now, they're an 8-8-1 record, a -5 from last week. But again, it's because of that mucky middle. I think a lot of teams have been switching around, both going down and going up. And I feel like the Arizona Coyotes were kind of just a victim to that. While I don't think that they played exponentially bad in the last week, they've just been a little bit more inconsistent. They got a couple of tough losses, but they've still been able to rack up some wins. But I still think the Arizona Coyotes are in a good spot, even if they're only at a .500 record. At number 17 is the Pittsburgh Penguins. They're at a 7-6-3 record right now, a -7 from last week. And it's been a weird week for Pittsburgh. We saw yesterday them trading for Tanner Pearson from the LA Kings, that whole Carl Hagelin, Tanner Pearson trade, which is going to be interesting for them to see how he works with the Pittsburgh Penguins in the next week. Tanner Pearson, if he actually factors into this team. But I think he'll be a good influence on the team right now. In the past week, it has not been all that great. The goaltending has kind of been inconsistent, of course, as pretty much always with the Pittsburgh Penguins. At number 16, I got the Florida Panthers. They're at a 7-5-3 record, a +4 15 from last week, and man, this past week has been fun to watch Florida. I think they're on a 5-game winning streak right now, something like that. They've been on an absolute tear, and it's fantastic to see. I predict them to make the playoffs. Right now, they're playing like a playoff team. In the last few games, pretty much everything has been clicking. The defense has been a lot more solid. The goaltending has been great. Luongo is back to form, and that offense, that top 6, is absolutely amazing. Dadonov is like on a 13-game point streak, something crazy. So, same as Hoffman. And pretty much everything is rolling for the Florida Panthers right now, and it's all coming together. At number 15, I got the Dallas Stars. Right now, they're at a 9-7-2 record, a +2 from last week. And even though they had some rough losses here and there, pretty much the injury bug has been slamming them in the back. They've had multiple injuries to their defensemen. Klingberg is out. You got, I think, Hansel or Mathon is out. They got a lot of separate injuries on that defense core. And what really made me really impressed with Dallas was that game versus Nashville, where they pretty much had 3 NHL defensemen and 3 AHL defensemen on their team, and they were able to get a point. Even though they choked a couple of times, they choked the lead a couple of times, they were able to get the point, which I was vastly impressed with. Now they have Radulov back, and they're starting to get a little bit more healthy, bit by bit, and I feel like the Dallas Stars will start to get a little bit more momentum. At number 14, I got the New York Islanders. Right now they're playing at a 9-6-2 record. They're a -3 from last week. They had a couple of big losses, but they also had a couple of big wins. And for the New York Islanders, they've been kind of inconsistent, I'd say, in the last week. So I dropped them a little bit from last week's rankings. Of course, we all know their PDO is off the charts, and they're pretty much bound to fall back down in the standings. But it hasn't happened yet. I'm not sure when it will happen. But right now, I still think the New York Islanders are playing decent. And while I don't see them as a playoff team, of course, I think that they've exceeded my expectations, at least to this point. At number 13, I got the Montreal Canadiens. They're at a 9-6-3 record. They're -4 from last week, and it's mainly because of that goaltending situation. Carey Price has not been great. Anthony Niemi has been even worse, and I feel like if the Montreal Canadiens want to actually make the playoffs this year, they're going to need to find consistent goaltending. And I'm looking at you, Carey Price, because right now, they're just not getting it. Carey Price has not been great. Anthony Niemi has been even worse, and right now, while I feel like the Montreal Canadiens are still playing well, it ultimately boils down to goaltending, which across the board has not been good. At number 12, I got the Colorado Avalanche. Right now, they're at a 9-6-3 record. They're a +6 from last week. I think they're on a 2-game winning streak right now. There was the huge win versus Boston, where that first line pretty much annihilated them, and that was a good win to see from them. For the Colorado Avalanche, I feel like last week they had a pretty terrible week, and it just seemed like the Colorado Avalanche were really on an avalanche, no pun intended, but this past week has been a little bit better for them. I still think they're a decent team. They still might make the playoffs, and I feel like in this past week they've played a lot better. So I'm going to raise them just a little bit, and right now, while they might fall back in the standings, I feel like they're playing like a decent team right now across the board. At number 11, I got the Calgary Flames. They're at a 10-7-1 record. They're a +1 from last week. And even though they didn't have the greatest week, they lost against a couple of bad opponents, I still like where Calgary is headed. And they can find some goaltending. That'll definitely be key for them. The offense kind of shriveled up a little bit this past week. I liked what I saw from the defense. Ultimately, right now, I still think Calgary is playing like a decent team, but I still think that there's another level of Calgary that we just have not seen yet. Especially on that offense, right now, it's kind of been inconsistent. I feel like we need to see more from guys like James Neal, especially for Calgary. I think they have a good offense, but they really haven't shown it quite yet. At number 10, I got the Washington Capitals. They're an 8-7-3 record. They're a -5 from last week, though. They had that big win versus Pittsburgh, which I thought was going to be a big momentum shifter for their season, but they had a big loss versus Winnipeg, which I think they probably could have won there. And for the Washington Capitals, I feel like this season has not gone to plan quite yet. I still think they're playing like a decent team. They got some injuries. I think Holtby is injured just day-to-day right now. That's big for Washington. But I still think as a team, we can see a lot better from them. And while they might be on a Stanley Cup hangover, I still think as a team, we can see much better from them than we've seen right now. At number 9, I got the Buffalo Sabres. Right now, they're at a 10-6-2 record, plus 11 from last week, and that just feels great. That just feels great to say. They're on a 3-game winning streak right now, and I've loved what I've seen from Buffalo in the past few days. They've won against good opponents. They've really been able to play well, and I've liked what I've seen from them both on the offensive side and the defensive side. And honestly, Buffalo, while they might not stick around in the top 10 for long, I like having them in the top 10 just because I feel like I'm going to give them credit for playing pretty well, and I think vastly improving on the expectations that I had and the expectations that a lot of other people had too. I mean, their season right now is going pretty well, and that's fantastic to see. At number 8, I got the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're right now at a 10-6-2 record. They're plus 6 from last week. I like what I'm seeing from them. They've gotten a couple of big wins versus Dallas, a couple of weird losses, but I think overall the team is starting to finally gel. Bobrovsky is starting to play much better than the start of the season, which is fantastic for Columbus. The defense is starting to get a little bit better, and of course now they have a healthy Seth Jones. So honestly, I think Columbus will be headed to the right direction, and this next week could be very, very huge for them when it comes to wins. I feel like at number 8, I feel like that's pretty justified for Columbus. At number 7, I got the Boston Bruins. They're at a 10-6-2 record, same as Columbus, but they were number 7 last week, which means that they're a plus 0 from last week. I like their week. I like the Boston Bruins this past week. They won versus Toronto. They had that weird loss versus Colorado, but I still think they looked pretty decent. And overall, the Boston Bruins, I think, are in good spots. They just got to Grav off that leave of absence, so hopefully they can get that goaltending situation sorted out. But as long as that first line keeps producing, I think they'll be very fine and very well off. At number 6, I got the Minnesota Wild. They're at an 11-5-2 record right now. They're a plus 0 from last week. I liked Minnesota's week. I think they had a couple of big wins, but they also had a couple of weird losses, so I think Minnesota is in the same position as they were last week. I still think they're playing very, very well on the offensive end. The defense, it needs some work there. I think the goaltending is inconsistent, but I feel like as a whole, the Minnesota Wild are still playing pretty good, and last week was a good indicator of that. At number 5, I got the San Jose Sharks. Anyways, not gonna say that anymore because that was cringy. But at number 5, I got the San Jose Sharks. They're at a 10-6-3 record. They're minus 1 from last week. I honestly like the San Jose Sharks record, and I was kind of tempted to put them higher in the power rankings, but I still think that they're on a good pace right now. They're starting to finally get wins, which is good to see. They were pretty snake-bitten and pretty unlucky in the first few weeks of the season, and now they're starting to finally rack up the wins, which is great to see, because I like the San Jose Sharks, and right now I think they're playing it very, very well. The offensive end, the defensive end, while Martin Jones has been inconsistent, he's starting to finally find a groove. At number 4, I got the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're at a 12-5-1 record, a minus 2 from last week. They were, I think they were second place for like 2 straight weeks, something crazy like that. But now they're back down at number 4. They had some tough losses. They had a loss versus Ottawa, which was infuriating, but well, right now, Tampa Bay is in a weird position. I think Andrei Vasilevskiy just had a fractured foot, so right now they have some key injuries, and having Andrei Vasilevskiy gone is going to be huge for them. Not sure how many wins they can get without him, but I think the Tampa Bay Lightning are still a good team, and they'll still continue to get wins. But right now, I don't think they'll be as dominant of a team as they were in the first month. At number 3, I got the Winnipeg Jets. They're at an 11-5-1 record. They're a plus 5 from last week. And I really liked what I saw from Winnipeg this past week. They got that huge win versus Washington. Right now, while they're still not atop the Central Division, I still think they're playing very, very solidly. And in the last week, we've seen a lot of great things from them. Not in just the wins, but in the losses as well. I like where the direction of Winnipeg is headed. And right now, I think they're playing like one of the best teams in the NHL. At number 2, I got the Nashville Predators. Right now, they're at a 13-4-1 record. They're minus 1 from last week. I think they're number 1 for like 2 or 3 straight weeks, so it was about time that they finally fell off. They're on a 2-game losing streak right now, but those 2 games were really, really rough. They lost 2-1 versus the Anaheim Ducks, which, even if it wasn't a shootout, you don't want to do stuff like that. Then they had a terrible, brutal loss versus San Jose, where they had the lead. They came back and then they had the lead, and then they choked it away. They had a big win versus Dallas, but again, they were behind in that game when Dallas had like 3 injured defensemen. So while Nashville, I still think is one of the best teams in the NHL, this past week made them look human, which they haven't looked for a while. Before I reveal number 1, shout out to the people that kept track, who automatically know who's number 1. You guys are the real deals. At number 1 in this week's power rankings, I got the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're at a 12-6-0 record right now, a +2 from last week, and I really like their week as a whole. They had a dominating win versus LA, they had a dominating win versus New Jersey. While they did have that rough loss versus Boston, that was the game that Garrett Sparks played in, and there was obviously a bit of a relief that Garrett Sparks was playing in there because the Toronto Maple Leafs did not play well behind him. But in those 2 games that they won, they were dominant, and while those 2 teams are both bottom, I think bottom 5 in the power rankings right now, those were still big wins for them. And I wouldn't have put them number 1 if it wasn't for the downfall of the Nashville Predators and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Of course, those 2 teams were number 1 and number 2 for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks straight. So there was bound to be somebody to really rise up and take their place, and I'm glad it was the Toronto Maple Leafs. But of course, one of my favorite parts about the videos is hearing your guys' opinion. So let me know what you think about this week's power rankings, week 6 of the power rankings. What do you think about the bottom 5 teams, the top 5 teams, and ultimately, what do you think about week 6's NHL power rankings? But if you want to watch another big Grav video, you can watch this video where I talk about the Tanner Pearson for Carl Hagelin trade that happened just yesterday. But that's what it, guys. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Comment down below what you think about this week's power rankings. I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Goodbye.